Gentlemen, this is the official start of the 2016 deployment. We are deployed and part of Operation Frozen Steel. We are being deployed to NAF, and Master Guns Reet, can you please switch to push to talk?
User joined your channel.
Yeah.
User joined your channel.
Alrighty, okay. I will now turn the floor over to Captain D. Mitchell, our S2 officer. Captain?
Okay, now if you guys have been keeping up with the intel packets, a month ago the Admiral Kuznetsov aircraft carrier and the Pyotr Veliki battlecruiser were spotted near the island NAF. With the oil embargoes enforced by Russia wreaking havoc on the NAF economy, Prime Minister Abramovich has requested immediate military and economic aid. Last week, 2 naval landing ships were spotted nearing the capital Mutens. 4 hours later, the communications network went down. We have been unable to track any of the Russian fleet due to the weather conditions. Satellite imagery is having trouble seeing through the storms. Any attempt by NATO aircraft to conduct reconnaissance have been met with Russian fighter intercepts and demands of leaving restricted airspace. Obviously, the Russian fleet may still be in the area. We could assume that the Russians have already made landfall and begun setting up defenses. As far as we know, they could have been here longer than a week. The famine in the region has led to a small insurgency among the population. They're considered radical and they are backed by the Russians. They believe that the Russians will help provide for them since the NAF government is having trouble in doing so, although the Russians caused the situation in the first place. They are armed with Russian block weapons that were smuggled via civilian shipping, which has stopped due to the weather. You can expect them to be suicidal and using IEDs. Their numbers are estimated around 1,000 men, maybe more. They're blended into the population itself. They're very untrained and not mentally strong, so they can attack, and sometimes they might cower out of it. The rest of the population that has not been radicalized will be friendly to our presence, but keep your eyes peeled. And that's all I have.
Alrighty. The floor now go to Major D. Schultz of S3 Operations. Major.
Gentlemen, the intent of the 15thMEU is to follow the instructions of the President of the United States to provide economic and stability operations to the government of NAF. Our primary objective is the protection of the Prime Minister, all local government officials, to prevent the local government from being overthrown by any local or outside forces. Our secondary objective is to provide aid to the local population in order to win their hearts and minds and stabilize the current unrest caused by the famine and economic collapse, with our tertiary objective being the protection of government and civil buildings, if possible, starting with government buildings and followed by civil buildings, as such as has already been listed in our operation orders. This tasking will be done by, as I mentioned, deploying ECHO, or rather by deploying GC elements to conduct stability and humanitarian aid operations to the population. We are currently also very disturbed by the recent reports stating that 4 days ago we lost contact with the Prime Minister in the state capital of Mutens. So while we are dispatching a platoon to go investigate, this Sunday, the state of Mutens, we are also conducting a pre-deployment mission this Friday with ACE to do an attempt to fly over to see also what we can see, and that will be an updated intelligence packet before this Sunday. Although we are still looking to conduct the stability operations as we intend, we are going to be very leery of what is happening on the island of NAF, but we still have our goal of we need to provide aid to these people. As such, ECHO Company, Gambler 2 and Gambler 3 will be providing aid to 2 of the cities as listed, with LED conducting their operation on Saturday to patrol the roads to make sure that we are able to accomplish that. Otherwise, gentlemen, that we do not consider Russia at this time to be hostile. They are not listed as an opposing force, even though that their assets and everything there are listed as such. It's only for the sake of planning and preparedness. We do not consider them hostile, so if you see any Russians, please do not shoot them, rather report their presence and notify your superiors at this time. And that's all I've got.
Alright, now Lieutenant Colonel Conrad, MEU XO.
Alright, so to bring everybody up to speed, kind of read a little bit between the lines and give you all a little bit more information on what the intent of MEU HQ is to apply this mission. One thing that we are citing here, we want to make sure everyone is fully understanding, is that tensions in the region are extremely high. Russian presence in the area, they have a lot of you know, I'm losing my phrasing. They have a large interest in the region, and they wish to maintain things at the level at which they have applied them so far with their embargoes and trying to bring this country basically to whatever it is that they're trying to get from them. I believe it is oil related. What we know is because of those high tensions, we have believed, as was briefed from S3 and S2, that they have made landfall. They are not showing hostile intent at this exact point, as was stated by the major. So make sure that we obviously are maintaining that, are keeping that in the back of our minds with our ROE. They are not hostile presence, and obviously any kind of escalation would be negatively affecting our progression in the area. To touch a little bit on the ROE, your mission, as was stated, is to conduct humanitarian aid and stability operations in the region. That is it. That does not mean that that in the presence of hostile action, you all will defend yourselves to the full extent of your capability from any force that you guys are to come up against. We have established
User joined your channel.
we've established pretty much our initial plans, which are going to be touched on in a little bit when you get to the individual company sections for their element level tasking for the upcoming weekend. But with that said, the whole point of this operation, as this point and what we have been requested to do specifically, is to provide humanitarian aid and stability operations and nothing more. Obviously, if we see any kind of escalation, we will react in kind. But until said time, you guys are to maintain the present ROE as established. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have one question. Do you know, like, do we know what the size of this Russian, I guess, element in naphtha is? Like, what kind of
S2, do you want to touch on that?
It's like a division or?
We could expect
Accurate.
upwards of a regiment.
Okay.
Understand that the full extent of their capability would be, as he said, a regimental force, which would be able to be deployed from the ship. Now, the exact numbers and what they have actually committed to landfall is unknown.
Right.
That's part of what we're trying to ascertain this Friday. With that being said, we will expect the fullest level of combatant level that we could if we ever were to take contact. But obviously, like I said, with them not showing any hostile action right now, we're kind of everyone's just kind of standing on the line, looking back and forth at each other, trying to make sure no one's trying to flinch and all that shit. Obviously, with the amount of people that they have to bring to bear, this could be pretty substantial engagement if we had to get into that. But at this point in time, we don't expect that to be a problem. Biggs.
Thank you, Colonel. You may have just mentioned it, but a question for S2 is, what does Russia have to gain from, if this is an operation to seize oil assets on the island, what do they have to gain from this that could lead us to what their intentions might
User
be?
joined your channel.
Well, as we all know, Russia's a big bully. And just like what happened with the little island in Ukraine, I forget what it's called, it's slipping my mind, but Crimea, yes. We could be seeing a similar situation here. And obviously, we did not act to stop Russia then. Now the White House has stepped up, and we're wanting to lay down the law now.
Basically, what we're seeing here is a classic escalation from, of a military standpoint. Up until our presence in the region, they had no reason to make their intent or make a presence on the island. As soon as we showed up and started attempting to provide aid as we were requested and as we are ordered to by the commander-in-chief, they obviously felt that they needed to provide an escalation on their level just to maintain face, and that's what we're seeing at this point. To answer your question, Biggs?
Yeah, thank you, Colonel.
All right, Shreve.
Have there been any statements from Moscow or from their president about what their intent is in the region? Have they released any official press briefings?
Moscow has been completely silent this entire time.
Do we know if our diplomats and Secretary of State and so on and so forth are negotiating with the Russians and trying to keep this from escalating any further?
If they were to be, we wouldn't have been informed of those activities. I would not. Therefore, we're just unsure. Nothing's been informed to us yet.
So we just have to watch the news, or I guess from now on.
Yeah, just watch if we receive any intelligence or we deem any intelligence like that pertinent to the deployment, we'll obviously release it. We have nothing at this time, though. Reedy.
Yeah, what MOP level are we deploying in?
MOP level. I'm not familiar with the MOP levels. Is anybody? Sergeant Major, maybe you?
Well, we're not worried about NBC or anything at this time. Neither chemical or biological.
Vito?
If if the Russians do become hostile and we do defend ourselves, what happened if the Russian soldier that we wounded or injured, do we take him prisoner or do we leave him out in the field?
Same ROE applies as always. All surrendering enemies will be given full quarter, delivered per COC to the highest level person on the server for maintaining, and brought for debrief to MUHQ.
Okay.
Gregory.
Thank you, sir. How do the citizens of the island, how would they respond to our presence, especially LED?
Schultz.
As Captain Mitchell had stated, the people of Nanth have requested our presence to come assist them. Obviously, they are in a famine and they are very much in starvation. However, the general populace is not hostile. So they are going to be very welcome to us giving them food and aid, but in terms like will they rise and help us against hostile forces? Likely not. We may get an informant or two, but generally these people are just wanting to stay out of the conflict that is arising, but they are still, in support of their government.
The easiest way to put it would be that that everyone on the island is victims of the current state of affairs that are happening in the region. We are sent to stabilize that, so all efforts on our end should be well received. Now, obviously, our direct interaction with them will govern exactly what the extent of how well they do receive us. So remember that while you guys are, having FaceTime with individuals and people out in the field. Okay.
Roger that. Thank you, sir.
Who was that? Clayton.
Sir, are there any U.S. civilian personnel stationed on the island?
There are none.
Karen.
I might have missed it, but are civilians allowed to own weaponry?
He's asking if, per the laws in the country, are they allowed to arm themselves?
Yes. But they're not allowed to open carry or anything like that. It'd be mostly in their homes.
So if you see someone with a weapon on their back and you're out there, you need to try to detain that individual, is what we're saying. Okay?
Right, thank you.
At the minimum. Dylan.
My question was, you said the civilians are friendly, but is there a mix of ones that, might try to help out the militia a little bit, and some that might try to help out us, or is the militia mainly like a radical group?
There is an insurgent force that has been found to be Russian-backed that is developed in the region in an attempt to destabilize the government. That was stated by us too in the beginning of the brief. As with normal insurgent activity, I would expect them to move in and out of the civilian populace unnoticeably because they're going to mix right and blend right in. So I would anticipate that your ability to determine whether that was the case or if it was an insurgent, force or insurgent member of the insurgent force, would be one and the same. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
Where am I?
Thomas.
Colonel, in the event that we are interacting with the Russian forces, how would we go about negotiating, or let's say that we are tasked with moving into an area and they are there, how do we go about completing our task in the face of non-aggressive Russian presence?
The best way that I would say is that obviously, it's going to be a very high tension situation anytime that when we're interacting in close proximity to each other. I would not anticipate that we're going to have to encounter anything such as that. We're not 100% sure how much of the land that they have moved into and are taking up, position in. But with that said, if you guys do interact with them, it needs to be the highest ranking member on the server needs to interact with them, and they need to use their best judgment on how to proceed, obviously with the best interests of the overall objective in mind. Okay?
Roger.
Davis.
His question was answered.
Yeah, mine was kind of answered.
Okay, Reedy.
There's a Russian insurgent question, kind of.
With the Russian forces so close to us, should we expect both combat and logistic support from the 15th, as well as should we expect support from 7th, 5th, or 3rd Fleet?
The current assignment of ships is dictated in the Warno. Those have been allocated to the region to assist with the stabilization and humanitarian aid efforts. Anything beyond that will require a formal request up the chain from UHQ up higher, and we have not made such a request at this time.
So this incident is being handled by the MEU, not a MEF or the Pentagon or anything higher command-wise?
We have the 15th MEU and its associated ESG has been dispatched to the region as the sole asset at this point. Obviously, if there was a need for an escalation higher, the request could be made, but as I stated, it hasn't been made yet. Okay.
Should we expect the request to be made then?
I don't anticipate it, not for simple humanitarian aid and stabilization effects. Now, if we were to take a full-scale engagement and require larger assets, we'd have to assess the scene, assess the battle conditions, and whether or not it warrants it. But I mean, you all know we can bring quite a fight to the area, so I would not anticipate it unless we absolutely needed it.
Do you anticipate the Russian forces for making any type of hostile move?
Not at this point.
That's all I got for right now.
Okay. William.
First boots on the ground in the AO will be June 18th. Has the season turned yet, i.e. from summer to winter? And if so, are the appropriate camos already available in our boxes?
Yes and yes. Yes, the island itself is currently in its winter season. We do have winter gear at our disposal, and we'll be utilizing it if we were to encounter snowy terrain. Okay.
Good to go.
All right, Cats.
Is there a need for Russian-speaking interpreters from the MEU HQ?
If we were to need them, we haven't had a problem with it yet, meaning that any interaction we've had, which has been negligible, and by negligible I mean non-existent, I would assume that they will come with their own interpreters as well. So if we do need it, we would make the request, but obviously at this point we don't find the need at this exact juncture.
I should just look out for the post if that's coming.
Nichols.
So how far is Russia from the island that we're going to?
Schultz, you looked at the region on the actual map, how far?
In terms of exact distance, I don't quite know, but in terms of their closest port is relatively in St. Petersburg, which is where their Baltic fleet is essentially stationed. And that is, essentially, I believe like 1,000 miles away, or maybe, obviously less than that. I'm just ballparking it.
It's a significant distance. They would need to be resupplied. It would take some time.
I wrote that.
That's what you're getting at.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know if they would ever, I guess, intervene from their location, like artillery, air support, something.
They have full disposal of both artillery and air support from the current ships that they have at their disposal on sea.
Cool. From a military perspective, from higher ups, do we expect this conflict to kind of turn out to be a miniature Cold War where we kind of bum rush as much as we can, have kind of like line, say they drop down the middle, we are on one side, they're on one side, we use binoculars, look at them, they look at us until somebody blinks and all hell breaks loose. Are we expecting something like that to occur on this island?
Negative. At this point, once again, their intentions in the region are simply to maintain their presence as a show of force, similarly as a counterpart to how we are. They have not shown any hostile intention. We do not expect there to be any interaction. And if we ever were to get to that point, we would expect to try to attempt to handle it diplomatically before aggression was to be started. Now that's all how we are progressing. They obviously, their intentions will never be something we will ever know. So we just have to be prepared for everything. Okay?
Alright.
Leap.
He's AFK.
So that he would AFK.
Alright. Read me again.
Should we expect support from NATO allies?
Not at this
i.e. air assets.
Not at this time. Is TeamSpeak crashing right now?
Yes. It sounds like it.
Oh boy.
Of course it would be.
Has any effort been made to make the island a no-fly zone?
Something we'll be covering in the actual briefing coming up with the individual sections. We have established a no-fly zone, but obviously the reconnaissance mission schedule for Friday will deviate from that established directive. For all AS guys in the channel, you will get all this information in time, right? I lost my spot. Who's next? Stickelman, I think?
Yeah, Stickelman, sure.
Alright, can you hear me?
Yes.
Will the weather conditions affect our weapon systems in any significant way?
No. Eli.
Do we know how Lithuania and Poland feel about our landing to the island?
I don't want to speak for S2 on the matter, but if it was coming from me, I believe we've received no interaction from them about any of this at all. Mitchell, can you confirm?
That is correct. We have not heard anything from them, but since we're friendly with those countries, I wouldn't expect anything bad to come of it.
Copy.
Alright, and then I think it's Rubito.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
For the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad, southeast of the island, is there a Russian fleet there, or any Russian military forces there, or is that just there?
All we know at this time is that they have 2 ships that are stationed somewhere off the coast of the island. We're unsure where. We've lost track of them due to weather. That's it as far as we're familiar with their fleet and assets. They have been seen deploying, as was stated, deploying some. We're assuming it was them. It has not been confirmed. Some stuff to the mainland. We're not sure what or how much. Pretty much, we don't know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Who was the lead? You were AFK for your question. Go ahead.
It might have already been answered, but I was, of course, late to the meeting in AFK. What is the freedom for infield leaders as far as escalation of conflict if, God forbid, a meeting with the Russians should turn violent? If shots are exchanged or they open fire on us first, are we to seek cover and radio for hire, or are platoon level assets allowed to engage at their discretion?
I expect that whoever's the task force commander in any one of those instances to make that decision on the fly. However, the ROE states that you guys will not fire unless fired upon, and once fired upon, you guys will defend yourselves to the full extent of your capability.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Reedy.
Should we expect naval fire support if needed?
We have it on station. Eli.
I do see the cruiser there. I'm more or less game-wise. This is an actual asset?
Arleigh Burke class destroyer, capable of providing long-distance artillery, basically, in the form of whatever. I mean, they would do it with missile strikes, cannon fire. We have all that at our disposal. That was something that the individual task force commanders that will be running in that capacity, they have already been briefed on that. We've utilized that in the past for FTX in preparation for this.
Tracking.
Do we have any ideas on what would happen if we were to get into a firefight? Would it be an all-out war, or what? With Russian forces?
That was just asked.
There's no way to necessarily know. All we know is that our intentions and what we have been directed to do in this area have been deemed of high importance, and therefore we will complete our mission to get it done, basically. That's what we've been told to do. You guys will execute the orders as established. You guys will operate under the normal ROE as established, and as it dictates and changes, we will keep you all up to date. With that being said, I'm not going to even begin to speculate what will result if we were to get into a conflict with them, so no one on our side should be the ones to fire the first shot. I'll make that very clear.
User joined your channel.
Anybody else? Alright. Sergeant Major, back to you.
Alright, gentlemen. Just remember, keep your head down, do your job, and we'll get out of this okay. We don't know the situation on the ground. That's been repeated multiple times, but we still got a job to do. Alrighty, so seeing as it's almost time for the company planning meeting and stuff, everybody that has to be there can go ahead and break off into conference room 2. My apologies. Everybody else can feel free to stay here, and we will touch on some other things that are not directly related to the deployment, such as several new policies and stuff that have rolled out. So we will give 1 minute for those people that need to hop out to go ahead and do so. So I'm not being walked over by TeamSpeak.
User left your channel. User left your channel. User left your channel.
Schultz, is there any additional information for reconnaissance?
Schultz left, he's down there. You guys should head down there for your briefing. You guys are being tasked this weekend. He'll provide you with all updated intel on, in that channel. All right.
User left your channel. User left your channel. User joined your channel. User left your channel.
I have one before I go.
Go ahead.
I was at a briefing at a task force last week, and there is still some question about RTOs and UAVs. Would you care to clarify that in public and put it to rest once and for all?
As far as if they can utilize UAVs?
Yes.
If it's dictated in their loadout, they can carry it, they can carry it. If it's not dictated in their loadout, it needs to be amended and passed up, because that was approved by the company command personnel prior to the policies being released. So if it's missing from that policy and they feel they should have them, that needs to come from the company command up.
Well, the question is, as it stands now, it is not in the loadout for RTOs, so I can safely assume that they're not authorized to carry it. The way I defined it was limited to JTAC use. Am I correct?
I believe that's correct. Now, if the RTOs would like to see that re-implemented back into their arsenal, because I believe they were allowed to carry that at one time, they need to make that proposal up their COC, and it need to come from their senior leader to myself.
That would be a negative. That inquiry actually came from further up the chain, brought into question by the task force commander. That's pretty much it. You answered the question. Salute, sir. I'll take my leave.
User left your channel. User left your channel. User left your channel.
Alright, so it looks like a majority of the individuals that had to clear out did. So here we will roll into some of the new policies and stuff. Start off, Lieutenant Colonel Conrad, would you like to touch